Hello and welcome to another Meta Chronicles video. This is a series of videos in which we track the major teams of the Dice Masters Meta. It's been going for quite a while now, but the last one was some 11 months ago, according to YouTube, in which I spoke to Dana Patton, who took his Master Mold team to the top of American Nats and to second place in Worlds. And today we are honoured to have with us friend and pod colleague Ben Sidescott, who has recently returned from the US, where he won this year's Worlds. Yay!
Hello? Yay.
Hello, Ben.
Fireworks going off in the background.
Yeah. Maybe I can do that in post.
You are a tech wizard, as shown by your screen.
Yeah, as you can see. So Ben, tell us what did you win Worlds with in the 11 months that have happened since Dana's video?
What's changed?
What's changed? Yeah.
Not that much, I suppose. Master Mold one. Master Mold.
Master Mold indeed.
I would call it mid-range Master Mold. It wasn't quite as aggressive. I had to adapt a little bit because of the control pieces from Secret Wars, which we'll get into, I suppose. But yeah, more of a mid-rangey, could control, but also could smack face like Dana's Master Mold team.
And I think that is sort of what you said quite a few months back. You said that's the way it was. That's the way it was going. That's what you planned to do, and that is indeed what you did. So
that's what I like doing. I mean, that's what all my teams have been successful being mid-rangey teams. That's why I hated last year when I was playtesting with Dana. I just kept losing because he was just too fast. And like, I can't play a team like he's playing that team.
Smack.
Yeah.
What has changed? What has Secret Wars specifically brought that has made the what's it called? What did you call it? Medium rare.
Mid-range.
Mid-range. That's the word I'm looking for. Mid-range. What has made that possible or preferable?
Well, so I think in most games like this where we have two things, you have it's probably a magic term, but you have like quick aggro decks, which kind of just want to kill you within as few turns possible, and you have control decks, which kind of seek to delay the game so long that your opponent essentially cries and gives up. Yeah. And mid-range is generally where games mostly end up, where it's somewhere in between that is what's good. Because generally games try and balance both sides of the equation, and Secret Wars obviously gave us a lot more control pieces, and in particular gave us protection for our control pieces with the reprinting of Distraction Global.
Yeah.
And what Distraction Global does means you can remove pieces from the attack zone. This can be done to stop your opponent pieces from attacking you, but also more effectively it can stop your pieces from being force attacked out of the field. So one of the problems with Dana's team was that one of the things it relied on very heavily was Slingers Global, which was a force attack global, so you could just remove Drax, remove Typhoid Mary. But now, because of Distraction, Drax became much more of a prominent problem and a way of handling Master Mold, because if you can get Drax out before they can buy Master Mold, it becomes a pretty big problem.
Mm-hmm. So when we say that your mid-range team had elements of control, maybe it was more the sort of removal side of control, rather because you didn't go with Drax yourself, did you?
Yeah, so the control I think comes in two different forms. One is stopping your opponent from doing something, and I think the other form of control is removing your opponent's pieces.
Yep.
So yeah, there's Drax and Typhoid which stop your opponent from doing something, but also there's control in terms of the super rare Mystique I use, which can spin stuff out.
Yeah. Quite a fan of removal, not so much a fan of control, but horses for courses. So if I put what I'm going to do is I'll put some overlays on in post, and I'll put one of Dana's team now so that people can see what the state of the meta was 11 months ago. And what have you changed about that team?
So the main pieces that stayed the same were the ramp pieces. The main idea with Dana's team was to get a Master Mold out as quickly as possible, hit people in the face with it, and then recycle it as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. So to do that, he had a couple of prep globals, the Mr. Sinister Global and the Dark Phoenix Global. And those all pretty much stayed the same. One minor change was I chose the Wolverine from Secret Wars rather than I think he used the Wolverine from Infinity Gauntlet. Both are mainly there just for the fist prep globals.
The Wolverine which sends stuff to the bag you had.
Yeah, I like that a little bit better.
Relevant?
Whereas his Wolverine, not really. It could have been. It's a good kind of.
Yeah.
It's a good piece to buy,
Sure.
and fun to mess around with. But yeah, not particularly. But it was better than the Wolverine that has awakened stuff that doesn't really have anything to do. But the main idea that he was doing, which I think caught people off guard, was the double prep turn one, if he could. And then Miss Sinistering your bag clean. So because he had so little ways to prevent Miss Sinister from being very quick, he could basically just not care about bag control, which is one thing I care a lot about, and just sacrifice any kind of bag management in order to get Master Mold out and game Master Mold out, and then just fielding as many psychics as you can to kind of thin your bag, and then either attacking through Master Mold or clearing it if they did block it or whatever, and getting it back around and just making so many tokens they couldn't do anything with. And then on top of that, Villainous Pact, which kind of went through, was a way of getting over a big wall of pieces if your opponent could do that, could wall up against you. So pretty much, that's what, 5 of the cards out of 10? 6 of the cards out of 10 remain the same. So anyone I haven't talked about the same, we just Slingers Global. We talked a little bit about that, but the Force Attack Global is a good removal piece. Was better then because there wasn't the Distraction Global, but could still force your opponent into saving some energy for Distraction Global if you can keep forcing their pieces to attack.
What pieces differed from Dana's team?
So one other similarity, I suppose, is the Free to Field Global. He had the Robin Global, whereas I changed to the Molecule Man.
Yep.
So that's again just a way to get Master Mold is very, very expensive to field. So I didn't want to have to constantly pay for him. So you use the Shield Global on Molecule Man to get free to field, but also on top of that, Molecule Man's a villain, so he protects against Villainous Pact in a way. And he also has Deadly. So again, making that Slingers Global, you force attacks coming into Molecule Man, and they are dead no matter what. So that was a slight change. I think that was a change that lots of people expected. And then kind of my 3 other pieces that I had in, which were very different, were kind of reading the meta. In the same way, I think he had a Mr. Mind, a 2-cost Mr. Mind, which kind of copied when attacks in case of Barry Allen. I think is what he was worried about. But Barry Allen isn't really a thing anymore.
He's not meta relevant, is he? Shockingly.
Not particularly. So I had some other pieces kind of just to control what I expected to see. So Mystique and Lilandra were kind of my heavy control pieces, and I talked about the 2 different aspects of control. One is stopping your opponent from doing something, and the one thing that we were seeing lots and lots of in testing is that there's so many globals. If you can't punish your opponent for using globals, well, if you can, sorry, it's a great thing. So the Lilandra became like a pivot piece. Why I liked it so much was it was a 5-cost shield, and if I missed enough, if I couldn't quite buy Master Mold, I could still buy Lilandra because the 6 cost to the 5 cost difference can be a big thing. I could then keep my bag management because I cared about that.
Would you make that choice? Would you?
Yeah.
You could buy Master Mold, but you instead bought Lilandra and controlled your bag. You made that choice.
Yeah. So for example, if on a turn 3, I rolled too many psychics and not enough bolts for Dark Phoenix Global. To reduce Master Mold, to reduce the Master Mold purchase. So if I couldn't buy Master Mold and prep it, or buy Master Mold and make sure my bag was still clean, I would often go for Lilandra just to pick that up to make sure my bag was clean next time. And then if Lilandra comes out, that's great. I'm taxing them, and if not, I get 2 shields out of it and more likely to buy Master Mold. That kind of worked to my detriment in a couple of games where I just didn't buy a Master Mold. But, I mean, it still worked out because you still burn. Like, you have to take so much damage to keep up with you if you have a Lilandra out and you have Sinister that it's very difficult to deal with. So that was like the heavy control piece. The piece was what we talked about, removal, and that came with the Super Rare Mystique, or Super Rares on this team. Super Rare Mystique, which had the Team Watch. So when you field a villain or Brotherhood character You can basically spin one of your opponent's pieces out. One of the problems with that was before we kind of tested it, was that actually you're giving energy to your opponent to miss Sinister with.
Yep.
Because they can choose whatever energy they spin down to. So if you're removing a Drax, for example, they can spin it to shields and they can miss Sinister to thin their bag out. One, that's not a problem if you have Lilandra.
Yeah.
So they're burning themselves. Two, if they're playing properly, they're already probably Sinistering effectively anyway.
Uh-huh.
And three, Mystique seemed to be the best on-turn removal. What that meant was I could field something like a Molecule Man, remove their Drax for a turn, and still be able to buy Master Mold that turn. Another way we tried that was with the Gladiator with Intimidate, but the 5 cost as opposed to the 3 cost was a massive difference. One of the questions I got asked was the Mystique force attack. Someone could force attack my Mystique out of the field.
Yep.
Generally, games I bought Mystique, there was distraction on the field, so it wasn't too big a problem. I could just distract her back. So yeah, that's why that was in. And the last piece I had him with Mr. Fantastic, which was my Master Mold counter in a mirror match. He removes 2 tokens, and we found by far he was the most effective piece in stalling out against Master Mold. Much easier to play with than Drax, and much less heavy on the I need to now protect this piece. You feel Mr. Fantastic, you cycle it, you kill him, you cycle him again. He seemed to work better than Drax for us. So that's why I went Mr. Fantastic.
Do you think it's fair to say that like people who were going to control you, that's what might require you to buy Mystique, those same people would be the people bringing distraction, which means that as you say, you don't have to worry about keeping her in the field. So
that's 100%. Yeah, and like before, the reason I bought her out of my binder, because when I team build, I get like loads of cards out of the binder and I make big stacks and then kind of mess with them as I'm playing. And why I had it out was because I was playing with actually a bunch of other villains, and one of the things I had initially thought about was running like an all villains team. I kind of tested that out once, and I was like, "Oh, Mystique's actually quite good, and it's not really giving my opponent too much." Actually, and then you kind of filter it back into the Master Mold team. It worked much better with the 2-cost Deathbird, which has Deadly. But then obviously I changed that back to Molecule Man, but it still works for me. And one of the great things is Master Mold's also a villain. So with Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman stops when fielded and when attacks abilities. So with Master Mold, she effectively shuts down the ability to make 2 tokens a turn out of the 3. If you had Mystique and you could field Master Mold, then yes, you stopped the when fielded make a token, but she didn't. Then Wonder Woman was gone, and you could still attack and generate another token.
Yep. Maybe I'll mention that the Afterworlds, there was a question which was answered on the WizKids rule forum.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, it was Afterworlds, so it had no retrospective impact on you anyway. But it was about Mystique not triggering herself, I think. But I assume it didn't have much. Even if it had happened before Worlds, it probably wouldn't have affected you, because I wouldn't think that you were buying multiples much.
Yeah, I mean, in competitive tournaments, you just don't get a chance to buy multiple of the same dice, especially when you're trying to buy a 6-cost. Never happened, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah,
okay.
It's an interesting ruling and does affect the team.
Interesting is a word. It does seem, Team Watch is quite a nice ability that didn't seem particularly overpowered. Just leave it alone.
Bring back Heroic.
Okay, good. So I think that's given us a general idea of the team and how it differs from last year's Dana's team. And can we talk now maybe about your sort of purchase order and your 3-turn theory, so to speak? What do you do if you go first? What do you do if you go second? Which do you prefer? That kind of thing.
So, obviously, this started with the Master Mold teams from last year, and their turn 3 theory was basically prep as much as you can, miss Sinister as much as you can, buy Master Mold turn 2, get out turn 3. And that was fine if you went second. In fact, it's great if you go second, and my 3-turn theory basically didn't change for the going second part. The difference is on turn 1 you get 4 dice, so the number of dice you have in that second turn to play with means you can prep Master Mold. If you go first, however, and one of the things I hated about Dana's team was if you went first, you basically threw Master Mold into a bag with 6 other sidekicks.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hoped you pulled Master Mold on turn 3 most of the time. And in my head, I always thought about that's kind of stupid because if you just make your bag clear and then if you go first, there's a 50-50 chance you'll get Master Mold on turn 3, but half the time you'll get it on turn 4 anyway. So I was like, if you can just make it so that my bag's still clear and I get on turn 4 and my bag's still working that way, then I like that a lot better. So
rather than having an upside down bag where you don't have psychics in the right place and stuff.
If I went first, then my turn 3 changed, and it was still prep a die and still Mr. Sinister that turn 1 because you still needed energy. So that meant on turn 2 you had 3 psychics in the bag, well 2 psychics prepped, 1 in the field zone, and you were rolling, so 6 dice altogether. My intention then was to buy a 3-cost character, prep the remaining dice in my bag, and Sinister through. So you had a clean bag. So that turn 3, you could buy Master Mold and still prep it and still have enough energy to Mr. Sinister. So my purchase on turn 2, if I was going first, varied wildly depending on what the team I was playing against was. If it was a opposing Master Mold, it would generally be Mr. Fantastic. If it wasn't, and it was heavy control, it might be Mystique. And if it wasn't that, and I just wanted to set up perfectly, and they weren't going to do anything to stop me, it'd be Molecule Man. I almost never went for Molecule Man because obviously I was always worried about something my opponent was doing.
And I don't think you had any 2 costs on your team, which goes against the.
I know. I hate it so much. I hate it. Yeah, I hate it so much. But the thing I was doing was putting on Deathbird at a 2 cost for Deadly, and then the Robin, the super rare Robin, with the free field global. And ultimately, I was like, with both of these pieces on, I can just put them together as one piece for Molecule Man, and then have a spare space for Mystique or Mr. Fantastic. And I just couldn't drop either of those 2. And I think I basically came to the same conclusion that the teams last year did, was that your 2 cost is Mr. Sinister. If you have 2 energy, you're not buying a character, you're Mr. Sinistering.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, and how did after turn 3 or 4, when you've bought your Mr. Sinister, how did the games typically progress? What were the things that you didn't want to see across the board, and what were the things that you were not bothered about so much?
My threats. So definitely Drax was probably the biggest stalling factor for me because I went that little bit slower. It meant that teams had a chance to get Drax out if they were doing it properly. But generally, my turn 2 purchase was meant to deal with that. But Drax is definitely a problem. The one thing I didn't really want to see was Mr. Fantastic because he is very, very effective with removing tokens.
And did you see him?
No, I believe Rob played him as well, but Rob, Jocelyn took out Rob for me, I think. So. That was good. Yeah, no, that was the one thing I didn't really want to see was Fantastic. The other big thing that wasn't overall very annoying, and I faced it in game 1, was the pirate broadcast. I hate stuff that stops me from using globals. I remember a few years ago playing Arj in a final, and he had the Wrecker. The Wrecker stopped all the globals. Globals are the best part of the game. Why would you ever want to bring something that stopped it? But I played against Pirate Broadcast a few times. Michael in the semi-finals had one as well. It's just baffling. It's just annoying, isn't it?
Yes.
It's just like I'm turning that off, so I'm sparing it. Luckily, I practiced a lot. Dana obviously did a bunch of reps for me, and you guys as well. And we were like, okay, Pirate Broadcast is here. How do we deal with it?
And how do you do it?
Turn off, and then just go slower.
Play the mini game.
Make sure you have control of it. Yeah, that's the best way. The other way, I never actually did it in tournament, but one of the ways that I dealt with it was buying the actual pirate broadcast action, which I did a few times in testing, but I didn't actually manage to do it in tournament. I maybe should have done it in my first game with Elliot. You just use pirate broadcast to turn off their globals. It's also great because if they saved energy from Mr. Sinister, it turns that off as well.
Yep.
So that was my two ways of dealing with it were either take control or buy it. Yeah. Those three things were the biggest threats to me that I was worried about.
What about Lilandra? Did you face any?
No, I don't think I faced Lilandra. Yeah, I don't know why. That's another way of stopping globals. But she's another 5-cost purchase, and if you're doing control already, the reason she fits in really well with the master mold is because she's that shield energy, and she's an alternate purchase. Whereas if you weren't running master mold, I don't know where she'd fit into like a Thor team, for example.
Yeah.
The team would kind of become about Lilandra. So yeah.
Now, obviously, there's no one quite like you, Ben. But what if there was a mirror match? Have you thought about that? Well, I mean, you must have thought about what.
Yeah, so it was the Mr. Fantastic. That was the main thing to deal with the master mold, and then the other thing was to get as many molecule men out as you could, just because they deal with tokens pretty well by themselves and work as in the mirror matches I faced. Mr. Fantastic did really well in one of them. In the other couple of master mold matchups, it was just a bit of luck, a lot of luck, and then also who could buy Villainous Pact, really.
Right. It might be worth mentioning about Mr. Fantastic that, I mean, probably everybody knows how it works, but you made an interesting point on the podcast the other day, which I'll link to in the description. It gets rid, or it knocks out, I think, it knocks out two character dice of an affiliation, okay, so your opponent chooses an affiliation, and you can knock out two characters of two character dice which are not that affiliation. So that takes care of anything which is not affiliated, like Sentinel tokens. That was the original point. But it was also useful, you mentioned, in extreme control cases because of...
Yeah, if they had Typhoid Mary and Drax, that was another thing we realized in testing. If they have both Drax and Typhoid Mary, if you feel fantastic, you're going to be able to get rid of one of them.
Yeah.
And I always felt with the heavy control that it was a little bit like a house of cards. Yes. They could stall you out for a long time, but if you knock one of those cards over at the right time, then it would all fall apart and you could win. I mean, that's the power of Master Mold. And generally, my successful teams have always had that kind of... You can come from nowhere. And I think successful teams in general, you always have that shot. You always have that Hail Mary. This roll went perfect for me. I took out that one control piece, and I can win. The Bard had that. The Lantern Ring had that. The kind of Gold Dragon team had that. You'd always do a massive amount of damage really quickly if your roll kind of went well.
Indeed. So obviously it went pretty well. You, as I've mentioned, you talk about this in more detail on the podcast, and you go through each of the different rounds. And I think that was really interesting. Do go and check it out. It does sound, not surprisingly, like you had a bit of luck along the way, because you can't win a big tournament without a bit of luck, I think. So
this, I think, but I don't want to sound disrespectful to my other successes, but this was definitely the luckiest. This by far the luckiest tournament I ever played in. Yeah. But I normally don't do very I normally don't get good luck. I normally do quite well, but I don't normally. Most of my teams are built around mitigating luck.
Yeah, totally. And your strategy
and
as well.
The way I play is normally to combat my bad rolls, because I do roll badly most of the time. But this tournament it worked out pretty well.
But equally, you also have to play with skill and mitigate that bad luck, and also have, at least in my experience, a certain amount of endurance, because when I've played in these kind of tournaments, it's been a long day and I struggle to concentrate. So well done. good
Thank you.
Is there anything in retrospect that you would have done? I mean, you won, so probably not, but is there anything you would have done differently? Anything you would have changed about the team?
I do think there's space to maybe drop. The other thing I was tempted to do is drop Molecule Man, the free to field global, because anyone else running Master Mold will have that. And lost teams had it anyway. So that was one of my temptations, just to make it a 2-cost death bird instead. Ultimately, I decided not to because Mr. Fantastic's fielding costs are also a pain. And if I wasn't running Mr. Fantastic, maybe I'd run that. The other thing I might have dropped was Slingers. I don't really like force attack globals.
How much did you use it?
Generally I forget to use it. That's why the problem I have.
Well, not when you're playing against me. I forget that the other person's holding an energy, and you know the energy changes depending which bloody force attack global it is. And then I spend all my energy and go, oh right, okay, I'm losing. I've just paid 2 to feel that. I'm just losing that. Okay, nice.
But a lot of the teams I faced had it as well anyway. People had 2 of them for some reason. Well, stopped the pirate broadcast, but a couple had a couple of the force attack globals, which is interesting. I think I might have dropped mine just because of the opponents I faced. I don't think it was particularly prominent, but then I don't really know what I would have put in its place. One of the things I like is a way to surprise your opponent by bringing something in. So maybe mutation. I'm gonna put that in there. Maybe then I would have been tempted to find a way to use the global. So I don't know.
Back to that other Wolverine.
Yeah, maybe
give your sidekicks deadly.
Well, yeah. One of the things I want to try was some kind of awaken. Remove the Loki with awaken that kind of turns off a character for a turn.
Yeah.
It's just fiddly. Yeah.
Okay. So, is there anything else, Ben, you'd like to say before we wrap it up? I mean,
no. Thank you to everyone who playtested with me. Playtesting is by far the most important thing you can do. It helps with that endurance. It helps you to know what you're doing in different situations and work out ways to play. So yeah,
being beaten by Dana 10 times in one day and then
coming
crying to me.
So annoying.
But you know,
he's an annoying bastard.
I let you beat me.
Yeah. Give me that confidence boost back. That's what you're doing.
That was my role. Punch back.
He's a very good player, which is obviously helps as well playing against good players.
Yes.
And you, James.
Yeah, good players and me.
Good players.
I understand. Okay, Ben, thank you very much, and congratulations once again.
Thank
Perhaps you. Now for the last time, I'll say I've said it a lot, but you've done extremely well. Good job, mate. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you at home for watching. We hope that was interesting and educational for you. If you have any questions, please do let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch other videos, and listen, of course, to the podcast. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and bye-bye.
Bye.